Hello, eCommerce fans. Welcome to another episode of our show. I'm really excited to have Christopher Baird with us today, who is in the global group of e-commerce at Puma. Christopher, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks very much for having me. I'm good. Can't complain.
Okay, wonderful. So you've been
Good.
into various roles in Puma, also heading the e-commerce aspect of business in South Africa. And now we are into the data analytic and insight intelligence platform. So plenty of things to discuss. So maybe we can start with the launch that you did in South Africa. Obviously, launched the digital commerce project. So what were the biggest challenges back then, and how this project evolved over the years?
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, our timing was certainly quite interesting. We launched Puma e-commerce South Africa roughly 3 months before COVID hit, which was a surprise, but also, I suppose, in the end, quite a blessing. We quite quickly became kind of an essentials product in terms of apparel within certain of our franchises. So our first year was absolutely fantastic. We never expected the results that we did, and we simply have to thank the fact that certainly in this country, e-commerce makes up, or then at least, it made up a small contribution in terms of retail engagement and purchases. That very quickly changed within the landscape of South Africa. Everyone was forced to understand online shopping, e-commerce, and certainly buying almost anything and everything online. So it leveraged us in a fantastic stance, really off the bat. So yeah, our first year, and certainly thereafter, we saw some incredible growth within our e-commerce division, which was pretty amazing.
Amazing. So you said that you didn't expect the growth. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges in maintaining and providing quality of service in this growth. Obviously, providing products and supplies. So how this forecasting work for you in terms of the supply chain side of things? And
Great question. Look, we didn't expect, obviously, the volume to which we pushed out in our first year. So both our third-party kind of architecture, the product that we had earmarked for our e-commerce division in the first year, even our buying cycle, we just never predicted that sort of volume. So we had to learn to be very, very agile and adapt very, very quickly. And we certainly have to thank our partners that walked us through that journey. They themselves didn't expect the type of volume we would have been pushing through their warehouse, the resources they would have allocated, even our IT infrastructure. We didn't predict that sort of volume and interaction, engagement, etc. So we were tasked with quite an agile need to adapt really quickly, even along the lines of which we would never have expected. Classifying certain of our ranges as essentials in this product, in this market. Which was quite tricky. I think most brands experienced it, and it was quite a strange local phenomenon in that you were only allowed to put certain items in your basket and not others because it's not essential, but it's coming from the same warehouse, it's the same basket. So it was a strange one, but we simply had to follow local government guidelines. And as that became a bit more relaxed, it obviously became a lot easier, but it definitely was a challenge in the beginning to follow local governance when it came to COVID and what was essential.
yes.
That didn't last too long. From the sort of Q3 back half of the first year, it became a pretty full operating business, and I think we probably hit our first year expectations within the first 5 months, which was amazing.
Wow, great success. What was the feedback from your traditional partners, brick and mortar partners, and how did you manage this balance in terms of the go-to-market on those various omni-channel, let's say, activities?
It definitely brought us closer, both as an internal customer organization, but especially with our partners that make up a large contribution of our brand within this country. So our wholesale partners, our marketplace partners, working with them to be equally as agile and have to adapt with them. So their own product inventory and movements and volume expectations, their own sort of challenges in terms of essential type legislations. And so it brought us, I think, a lot closer to our existing partners. It allowed us to almost forced us to put on a kind of a true 360 omni-channel hat, whereas we didn't expect to have to need that in the first 2 or 3 years. We really had to pull in the resources and start thinking out the box from month 4 to 5, which was 2-3 months into COVID, which was great. So it really leapfrogged us, and into our second year, we were a fully fledged DTC operation that was working very closely with our own brick and mortars, and certainly wholesale partners, and it brought forward the marketplace concept as Puma pretty quickly. Whereas typically we don't look at marketplace within a new region within the first 3 years. We had to really adapt that quite quickly. So it sped up our trajectories in terms of our strategy. It allowed us to work a lot closer with our own brick and mortar, as I said, and definitely our marketplace and wholesale partners, which was great for the brand.
Yes. So there was some differentiation in terms of products, or all products were available on all these domains, like your own website, brick and mortar, marketplaces?
Well, yeah, I quite like that question in that we had set aside certain strategic product for our online channel, and very quickly learned that that wasn't sufficient. It wasn't enough. And what was intended to be a 50-60% product range contribution to e-commerce, we pushed that up to almost 95%, and it became our flagship number one store very quickly, which was great.
Yes. And what were the initial activities you did on the marketing side in terms of channels? What worked for you?
That didn't change too much off our original strategy. We were one of the last countries globally to go online. So a tremendous amount of global guidance was given in terms of our marketing sort of budgets and contributions. And that's what Puma does really well, is we work globally very closely with every country, and we work with a similar kind of top line P&L type marketing strategy, budget contributions. So that didn't change too much. We kind of had that tried and tested formula from the regions that we have been trading for 5, 6, 7+ years, and we kind of mirrored that strategy, and which worked really well for us. So that didn't change too much.
And you work with a lot of the global marketing assets that you already had, or there were some initiatives locally with some local influencers or content creators?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always fantastic local initiatives done by our local marketing team, which are pretty incredible. But again, as a global brand, we all lean into the same centralized resource, pot in terms of campaigns and marketing strategy, and certainly content.
And in terms of, obviously, there are a lot of categories of apparel that you provide, right? And
sure.
Can you give us like a quick overview of these categories and what's the strategy, to promote them?
I mean, I can't speak too much for the strategy.
But just to figure out, the type of product, the type of categories that you try to operate.
It's a pretty broad brand offering. We touch on most LSMs through and across the line, right from your core essential type training and running through to your motorsport division, which has become massive globally in terms of a franchise, to which we've recently secured the rights to the F1 apparel. So that tied alongside motorsport has really elevated that kind of category into most sports. So golf, tennis, obviously soccer is big for us locally. It's a big one. Kind of touches on even swimming, etc. So certainly most general sport kind of divisions. And then a big part of our business, which really elevates and aligns our brand, is our prime. So your kind of top end, elite sort of prime apparel, footwear, accessories. Basketball has become sort of massive. There's a fantastic drive out of America to push that division and really elevate it. So it's a really great broad kind of pushing sport forward across multiple sectors as a brand.
Yeah, and obviously create a lot of opportunities for retention as well, right? So I'd love to learn more a little bit about that aspect of things. So there is a purchase. What's usually happens? Follow up on that.
And that's pretty much become where I'm currently sort of positioned as our new division, or as our new strategy around our consumer data platform or our consumer intelligence platform, is intimately understanding every customer globally and every single touch points, and far beyond post for their first purchase is what's our engagement, how do we increase client lifetime value, and do we really understand that customer at the most intimate level. And yeah, retention, that's our focus.
Yes, yes. And obviously you mentioned, and also this is how you describe yourself on LinkedIn, is the focus on profitability, right? And making things in a very profitable way, just trying to balance all these marketing activities with supply chains and to make it a really profitable business. I think that's definitely a focus these days, right? That's like pre-COVID or during COVID, it's all about growth and just supporting the demand. But now it's more on this operational efficiency and making sure businesses are profitable, obviously with the help of intelligence and AI and data, which we'll talk shortly. But that's a major component of it. So, and today you are heading the intelligence division of the data analytics and intelligence and AI. So let's start from foundations. What does it mean to lead the consumer intelligence platform for Puma globally?
Well, so thanks to the full team that's based in Herzogenaurach in Germany. It's a new focus for us. And that is intimately understanding, as I said, every touch point with every single customer across all our channels, with online, offline. Invested tremendously into resource infrastructure and team to really drive our consumer intelligence platform. And we're slowly rolling that out to most of the markets. Europe, UK is live, and we'll be adapting and rolling out to most of the regions kind of in the next quarter. So we'll soon have a really great global view of AI-driven data on every customer and every touch point that they've engaged and could engage with us. And that drives client lifetime value, it drives loyalty, it drives relative engagement. So what we send and how we communicate and where we communicate to those customers wouldn't be possible without a pretty advanced, localized kind of data set across every customer.
Yeah, actually, the plan is to try to first collect and then analyze like every touch point with Puma. What are some of the key metrics that you measure and focus?
Yeah, the primary are pretty standard and traditional, and looking on at not just our top line kind of value per customer, but what is their repeat retention rate, what their likelihood to buy and their frequency or their monetary frequency. A lot of segmentation. So, breaking each customer down into one of our 7, 8, 9 different pillars as a product assortment. Things like gender, things like marital, sort of marriage status, where they're based. Right down to preference of color, preference of time of engagement, the likelihood of them to open or engage with an email at 8 o'clock in the morning versus 5, 8 o'clock in the afternoon. When they do engage, how frequent and how likely are they to re-engage at a later time, and really segmenting so many facets of each customer, not just within our brand, but who are they, where are they, and what else do they like, and starting to look at things like cross-sell and upsell,
And these things are happening on a global scale, or like there are individual initiatives that you support locally in different regions?
So each country is doing a really good job and have been for some time locally within their own respective tools and systems in terms of where I fit in, and kind of our consumer intelligence platform, where that's moving is to really start centralizing that into one data set, irrespective of where their customers based. But the key goal there is to leverage strong partnerships we have and are starting to add on to then make use of those sort of partners and roll those partners out globally. So streamline our vendors, streamline our strategic partnerships that then tap into that centralized data, whereas with most kind of global brands, and certainly for us up until now, it's generally quite fragmented within each local region's preferences and contractual obligations, etc., which has been working. But we obviously want to start leveraging our global footprint and our global vendors, start looking at fantastic economies of scales of of commercials, adapting AI, and allowing even the smaller regions that have just turned on e-commerce relatively recently to have access to those global systems, the global AI engine, and ultimately our global consumer intelligence platform.
Yeah, you mentioned that AI. How is it? How do you utilize AI specifically for this type of use cases?
I mean, it's quite new to us. It depends on the vendor to which we have in our ecosystem of our consumer intelligence platform. We're relatively new, so I can't speak too much of it. But obviously, it's a focus. We need to start leveraging AI. We need to start looking at our data and allowing for AI-driven automations that reduces resource cost, time. So it's on our radar, but it's far from where it can be.
Yes, makes sense. And
Yeah.
there is any example you can share of any data-driven initiative that was generated through analyzing data and come up with some creative, marketing campaigns or products or something of that sort?
Can't get into too much detail, but I mean, maybe going back a little bit to what I said. So, not just understanding who the customer is and what they purchased, but what are their segmented preferences with things again like time of purchase preference. What channels are they currently engaging on? Lookalike audiences of where they potentially could be engaging, and it's how we push that communication to them in a relevant time and channel manner. It's more focused and targeted. It's less broad. But there are different strategies. We obviously have our broad marketing strategy, but we also have, specifically within e-commerce, leveraging our centralized data, is real targeted audiences. Ultimately, with the conversion to not just be relevant to, but for like the customer to engage and buy, but most importantly, then come back, re-engage, and just be relevant.
Yes. Did you learn something new since you started analyzing all this data? I mean, how do you see like the future of e-commerce? I mean, what do you think is shaping up, when you put so much focus around obviously data collection and insights and obviously AI that is coming up? What are your thoughts in terms of how things are going to change?
I'm very passionate about data, and when you start to stitch and consolidate multiple existing long-standing vendors into one data source, it just opens up an amazing sort of caveat of knowledge about that customer that otherwise would be fragmented and not necessarily looked at across the different channels and vendors and touch points.
Yeah.
So it's allowed us to quite intimately understand who's our audience, who's our potential audience, where do they fit into our brand strategy, and how and where we communicate to them, which up until now has been quite siloed, which has allowed for overlap. It's allowed for kind of cost wastage. It's allowed for fragmented sort of communication strategies, which is quite normal. But when you really bring that into what's otherwise referred to in this industry as a kind of a CDP or a local CDP, it just gives incredible insights into our customer. And you start to blend that with your online and offline data, you really start to become a relevant, meaningful brand that understands the customer. And that's all they want. Once there's
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Have you launched some new initiatives to help you collect more data? Obviously, you're all the digital assets, you're implementing a variety of tools just to collect data, but are you like customer surveys, offline things? I mean, is it providing more ways to collect this data? You mentioned also the cooperation with local partners all over, right, in the different regions. Seems that there is a lot of activities around implementing more tools and more processes to gather data in all those different touch points, which I guess the numbers is increasing by the day, right?
Look, I think if anything, we kind of more hesitant to simply introduce new and different sort of vendors. At this stage, we're in a data collection phase. We're also in a bit of a streamlined phase where we're looking at overlap, and not just within one region that might have multiple vendors that have overlap of solutions, but globally. So how can all regions, irrespective of where they're based, start to leverage a preferred global vendor, starting to eliminate solution or platform offering sort of overlap. So certainly efficiencies with our partners, efficiencies with the options that those partners provide, which allows for a more profitable vendor solution. And as I said, we're more in the data collection phase at this stage.
Sure. Obviously, there are a lot of changes in terms of how do you launch, creative marketing campaigns, like just how do you use the data to take some smarter decisions. So I guess plenty of things to discuss to do, and all this, I mean, technology and processes. You've built this in house, right? I mean, you've built a team internally to start managing all these workflows and processes and data collection. This is the way of building this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's important that we have a best of breed team, and it's important that we essentially own that data. It's our customers, so it's our data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And obviously, this data is going to be used to try to improve, whether it's on times or cost or performance on all aspects of the business, right? Supply chain, fulfillment, marketing aspect. That's the vision, right? I mean, to help in all aspects of the business, right?
Yeah, it's really through the kind of supply chain of the customer's journey. So not just the marketing strategies of how we communicate to the customer, but operational efficiencies, especially when it comes to things like returns and exchanges. That opens up a whole new realm, leveraging the data that we know about the customer, reducing our return rate. Obviously, return can make or break any e-commerce business. And when we start to leverage smart data when it comes to reverse logistics, allows for a better experience, allows for more sort of lifetime value with our customer, and makes them want to come back and buy again, as opposed to buying our product, on a different website. That's a differentiator.
Yes. I just read an article that towards the holiday sales in the US, they're expecting 40% returns this year.
Yeah, that's pretty
wow.
high.
Crazy, right?
That's pretty high.
It's going up substantially from last year. So, yeah, amazing. Great, Christopher. What else? I'm very interested in work-life balance, and I know you do a lot of things outside of work as well, right? So please share with us.
Yeah, that's a big part of what kind of gets me up in the morning. I'm obviously as a sports brand, I'm naturally very passionate about a healthy mind and body. I do a lot of trail running within Cape Town. We have some of the most fantastic trail running routes in the world. But I'm also a very keen river paddler. So those are the two primary kind of sports that I do. And then just things that keep me of sound mind and keep me energized. I do a daily ice bath. I do a daily sauna. So those two extremes of kind of heat and cold, and it just allows me to stay focused and positive.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. And Christopher, what are some of the tips you can provide to other data and intelligence teams out there, or companies who are trying to launch such an initiative internally?
It's super important that you find the right partner that's aligned to your brand strategies and your position in the market, and for that brand or for that vendor and partner to understand where you're currently positioned in the market. Are they capable to scale and be agile as you grow with them? Operational efficiencies when it comes to e-commerce, that's key. That can make a big difference in terms of your kind of bottom line EBIT profitability. The efficiencies of the warehousing, pick pack operations, definitely reverse logistics. So finding the right partner that can allow good operational efficiencies, but equally be agile and can scale with you. Depending if you're a local or global brand, you need to leverage what your peers and what your other countries, for example, have tried and tested, and start really looking at good economies of scale and really negotiating with those vendors to see the bigger picture. If you take on a new vendor and you're a global brand, initially there might be a relative higher cost structure because you want a small region, but the bigger picture is that you're a brand that's in 24 countries. And so they've got to understand that it's a partnership and that you're going to grow together. And for you to be profitable within your first 1 to 2 years or even 3 years as a brand, you've got to allow, that partner's got to allow for a bit of flexibility to kind of to see the bigger picture and really leverage those economies of scale, which we've done quite well as a brand. As the third largest sports brand in the world, that's obviously quite easy. But for smaller brands, it can be a challenge. Just finding the right partners that can take you where you need to get to. I'm very passionate when it comes to the profit and loss analysis side of e-commerce, at least, and quite intimately understanding local benchmarks in terms of your cost ratio to OPEX and net sales, and is that aligned? Ultimately, are you looking at your bottom EBIT? What are you contributing to marketing? Marketing is a massive one. You've got to invest, personally, no less than 10 to 15% of your top line expectations. You've got to be putting straight into marketing from day one. And yes, that's an investment, but that's how you're going to get market share. That's how you're going to grow.
At the beginning, it's even higher than that, right? And when you launch a product,
that should be probably 20 plus percent should be a marketing spend contribution. And there's big local companies in terms of e-commerce that have strategically been running at a kind of an EBIT negative, which is fine if you're playing the long game and your objective is to get market share. Then your marketing contributions are going to be significant. Your operational expenses to give a good service might be really high. And so you might well be running a negative EBIT in the first 3 years, which is fine if you're playing the long game.
Yeah. And obviously just circulating these inventories and the difference between cash flow and free cash flow, right? Yes, I have cash flow, but it's all allocated to inventory. Those initial few years are really tough, right? To break through.
I'm just thinking back to the first couple of years running e-commerce for South Africa. What was definitely a challenge, but it had to be a focus, was just good product inventory management. So ensuring that, are you analyzing your search results? What are customers asking for versus do you even have that product? Going from a weekly or bi-weekly kind of replenishment cycle to every 1 or 2 days, keeping your inventory light but wide as opposed to shallow, kind of in deep, or narrow and deep, should I say. So your product efficiency, your churn rates, and your replenishment strategies have to be not just agile, but it's got to be analyzed daily. That speaks to your OPEX costs if you're carrying the wrong product and you're carrying too deep of the wrong product that you're not turning. So there are systems out there, but you definitely need an dedicated resource that's analyzing that personally every single day and feeding that information to the planning team, to the replenishment team, to the warehousing team, product and stock management, not just understanding our customer, but do we even have the right product for what they're asking for? The likelihood of when that product's going to start moving based on sport campaigns or local trends, for example. What I've seen in a couple of companies is typically your kind of buying team, your planning team, and your allocating team don't necessarily work that closely together. And your e-commerce division is the most agile and the most broad in terms of market share, and it's got to be closely aligned at a micro daily level when it comes to simply ensuring that you have the right products at the right time. And it's a task on its own, for sure.
Yeah. Everything is getting more and more specialized and requires more expertise in those different areas, and no brand owner knows everything, right? And again, it's depending on the size of the company, of the brands, of course, but use those experts, use the right agencies, as you mentioned, that fits your culture. I think it's very, very critical, and great feedback. So, Christopher, appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to having you here.
It's only a pleasure. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.